All right, we are in Job chapter 11. We've looked at what Eliphaz had to say, and Job responded. Then we looked at what Bildad had to say, and Job responded. Well, tonight we're getting to Zophar, and we'll see how Job responds to that. And I was just blessed so much as I was studying this and reading God's Word, and He was opening up to me things that I hadn't seen before, and I hope I can effectively share that with you. But Zophar, of course, is the third one, and in many ways he's the harshest one. If that can happen with Eliphaz and Bildad, the way they accuse Job, but he is, and so we're going to look at that. Let's start reading the first few verses 1 through 4 of chapter 11 in the book of Job. Are all these words to go unanswered? Now Job has just given his response to Bildad. Zophar the Naamathite replied, "Are all these words to go unanswered? Is this talker to be vindicated? Will your idle talk reduce men to silence? Will no one rebuke you when you mock? You say to the Lord, my beliefs are flawless, and I am pure in your sight. Oh, how I wish that God would speak, and He would open His lips against you." That right there, Zophar starts out saying, Job, you're all wrong. You're accusing God, you're not innocent, and that's what he's talking about here. And Job in all this is saying, I'm paraphrasing some, Job is saying that in his suffering condition, now we remember all that he's lost, all his family, all his income with the flocks, all of this has been decimated. His children are dead, and now he's covered with boils. And I've had a boil on me, and that's not pleasant. Can't imagine being covered with them. And they're so bad that he's sitting around the fireplace taking broken pottery and scraping the scabs to try to get some relief. If we can get that picture, he's suffering through all that. And then he has these friends who are accusing him, and he said in the previous chapter, while he's doing all this suffering, that he doesn't have the energy and clear-mindedness to fake it, to make it up. They're accusing him of, saying, I'm innocent, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. And they're putting on a false face. He's saying, look, I'm so down, I hadn't got the energy or the wherewithal to make up stories. This is what's happening. That's where he is. But Zophar ignores that, Job's assertion. He just accuses Job of trying to talk himself out of his situation, is what he says. And that's why he's saying, is we going to just let him do all this talking and be silent? And he's basically saying, I'm not. You say the Lord God, my beliefs are flawless, I'm pure in your sight. Oh, and Zophar, this is a tremendous kind of curse against him. Oh, how I wish that God would speak, that He would open His lips against you and disclose to you the secrets of wisdom, for true wisdom has two sides. Know this, God has even forgotten some of your sin. And that's where it gets into about Job being ignorant of God. And what he's saying here is, Job, as bad as you've got it, you're not being punished for as bad as you've done. That's what he's saying to him. And that hurts. I mean, to hear that. And I mean, I don't think any of us would want to try to stand up under what Job has lost. Just overnight to lose all of your children and livelihood, and in your heart, you know you hadn't done anything wrong. Perfect man that never did anything wrong, and that's not what the Bible teaches us that a righteous person is. A righteous person is one whose heart is towards God, trying to serve. Because of the sin nature, we fall. But a person who is righteous, wanting to serve God, won't stay down. They confess it, they repent, they change, and they go on, and that's what Job knows he is. And of course, said, Job, none of what really happened in heaven, where Satan came and incited God to let him do these things. But here Zophar comes and adds pain to misery and says, you're not getting as much as you should get. That's real encouraging, isn't it? And so let's continue on. Verse 7. Can you fathom the mysteries of God? Can you probe the limits of the Almighty? They're higher than the heavens. What can you do? They're deeper than the depths of the grave. What can you know? Their measure is longer than the earth and wider than the sea. And he's right. I mean, he's describing God there. He's right. That it is God. God's ways are beyond our conception. They're higher, than the heavens, higher than our thinking, deeper than the grave. And so he's right about that, but he's accusing Job of saying that he knows better than God in all these things. That's what he's saying. And he's saying you're ignorant of God. You're not taking into account the greatness, the majesty of God. And that isn't true at all. But that's where he's coming from, and being so convinced that the only reason this kind of tragedy would come against a person was because they're sinning. And that there is grounds for that, but not in this case. God is doing something different here, and they're not opening their eyes to see it. They're not even considering it. And so Zophar is speaking like he knows what God is doing, while he accuses Job of claiming too much knowledge and wisdom. Zophar is coming, but I know what God's doing. I know what you need to listen to me, Job, because I've got this pinned down. That's what he's saying through here. And he's saying Job is a hypocrite, and this is a harsh criticism. But Zophar is saying, I know, you listen to me. And it had to be extra hard, and we've all felt this, because Zophar, as far as we know, was a young'un compared to him. And that's one thing, to have that. I'll tell you a story. When I was pastoring the other church, we'd have a movie. We'd invite people to it. And one night I chose a movie called Oh God, You Devils. Anybody know it? Yeah, Sue knows it. She's watched it with me. It's with George Burns. George Burns plays God and he plays the devil. This is the third one in the series. Well, I challenge all of you to watch it, and I've challenged my grandson Preston to watch it, because as you follow through that, you will find biblical, scriptural point after point after point about who God is. And I'll tell you, the very end of it is, Satan has, this young singer that wanted to be a great star has signed his soul over to Satan. So Satan's made him into this worldwide phenomenon. And of course, the guy's miserable. He remembers part of it. He's lost his wife. He's lost everything. And so he prays to God. He's sitting in this big penthouse in Las Vegas, praying hard for some sign that God is there. I wish I could talk to the person who wrote this or did it, but he's there all day, and it comes time for his concert. He doesn't see anything about God. He just feels like God's not answering him. He gets up, he leaves, and as he leaves, I'm joking up, as he leaves, God puts a rainbow in the sky. God was listening the whole time. And then he goes in, and he's getting ready, and he's had enough. He actually takes an overdose of pills to kill himself. He's had enough. Well, the next scene comes, it's down to the casino floor. Satan has moved into some people playing cards. I don't know what the game was, but doesn't matter, poker, whatever. He's sitting there and playing, and God shows up, sits down, and Satan says, I wondered when you'd show up. And so they go along for a while, they banter back and forth, and God says, I want to play you a hand for this guy. And Satan says, what's he to you? He says, well, I made a promise to his father. Another story. And so Satan says, okay. So just the two of them, they freeze everybody, and God and Satan are playing a hand of cards for this guy's soul. And they're going along, and Satan has his hand, and he lays it down, and he doesn't lay it down, but they're there, and God says, I'll tell you what, I want to increase the odds. He said, if you win this hand, you get free reign. You can get anybody you want to. I'll leave you alone. And Satan says, well, what happens if you win? You leave this boy alone and you get out of here and you don't bother these people. Big thing for Satan, telling Satan he had to just quit bothering people. So he sits there and he studies and studies. He finally throws his hand and says, that's too rich for me. So he says, God, what you got? God lays it down. He didn't have anything. And Satan throws a little temper fit. He does his hands like this. Oh, why did I do that? And then George Burns, God says, I put the fear of me in you. And there's so many jewels all through this movie like that. And, you know, that's pointing out, just like Job started here, Satan, we maybe give him too much power, but I mean, he's a powerful angel, but he is still responsible to God. He is not greater than God. God, he answers to God. And that's what that brought out in this movie. I do rent it, or it's on streaming. You can get it. It'll be a joy. You like George Burns, and it's good. It's a good movie. You'll get to kind of study it, pay attention. Well, anyway, I got off my point. So I showed this movie, and we had a young woman and her son show up who weren't really faithful, weren't really strong in the faith. Well, after we showed the movie, I had a girl that was working our daycare, attending our church, maybe 19 or 20, I don't know, something like that. I mean, she came in the next week and just dressed me up and down for showing a movie like that to this person that didn't know the Lord. She completely missed the point. And I had trouble staying civil because not 2 weeks ago, she was telling me how bad she had messed up her life and had gotten it straightened out, and now she's in counseling me, you know, and not saying we can't ever learn from them, okay, but you get my point. I'm kind of, where are you coming from? Well, that's where Job had to be with Zophar here. Job has lived all this life. He's been prosperous. He's been successful. He's had more than this young man probably ever will have. And he lost it. And this guy's saying, it's because you're such a terrible sinner. And you need to listen to me because I know God better than you do. Oh boy, Job had to be boiling. He just had to be. But that's what's going on here. And so he's saying in this verses 4 and 5 that Zophar is going to speak for God because God's busy. That's not the truth. And then he goes on in verse 6. Excuse me. Zophar says Job, with all his suffering, isn't getting what he deserves. And he says the fact that Job is suffering as much as he is means that he is a worse person than his friends know. That was his interpretation. They thought Job was a righteous person, but if this is happening to you, Job, you must really have some sin we don't know about. These are some good friends, aren't they? So that's what Zophar is doing. He's really harsh on him. And I don't know that I'd call him much of a friend, but that's not ours to call. So we get then to verse 7, that Zophar starts testing Job's understanding of God, and that's why he brings up some of these questions. In verse 8, he does give a great summation of God and God's greatness, and a not so subtle reference that Job is ignorant of all this. And he accuses Job again, and that makes all three of Job's friends accusing him of sin that he's hiding and not admitting. And then Zophar just says again, down in 15 through 17. Let me read that with us. I think we picked it up 13. Yet, if you would devote I need to back up to 10. If he, God, comes along and confines you in prison and convenes a court, who can oppose him? And we can't. Surely he recognizes deceitful men, and when he sees evil, does he not take note? But a witless man can no more become wise than a wild donkey's colt can be born a man. That's not a subtle insult against Job there. Yet if you devote your heart to him and stretch out your hands to him, if you put away the sin that is in your hand and allow no evil to dwell in your heart, then you will lift up your face without shame, you will stand firm and without fear. You will surely forget your trouble, recalling it as only waters gone by. Life will be brighter than noonday. Darkness will become like morning. You will be secure because there is hope. You will look about you and take your rest in safety. You will lie down with no one to make you afraid, and many will court your favor. But the eyes of the wicked will fall, and escape will elude them. Their hope will become a dying gasp. Now this is the problem. He's really speaking truth, okay? For somebody that has sin in their life, if they will confess that and yield it to God, God will be merciful. He's not wrong there. The trouble is, he's accusing Job of this. Job's asserting his innocence, and he's arguing about that, saying, no, Job, you must be a worse person than we ever even imagined because of all that's happened to you. And that just, I don't know how Job sat still for that. Let's go on to chapter 12, Job's response. Job responds with sarcasm. Here's what he says to him. Doubtless you are the people, and wisdom will die with you. So you see what he's saying there? Oh, you died. None of us are going to know this wisdom. So he's doing a little jab there. But he says, but I have a mind as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Who does not know all these things? And really Zophar was saying basic theology that probably anybody that knew God knew. So Job comes back at him like that. And in verse 3, Job is saying to them that they don't know any more than he does, and the problem is they're not addressing the real situation. Job is suffering. He's hurting. He's had loss. And they're coming in attacking him, and he is not default. Job goes on to say, and I don't take time to read all of it, but he starts recounting, I become a laughingstock to my friends. Though I called upon God, and he answered, a mere laughingstock. Though righteous and blameless, he's still asserting himself. Men at ease have contempt for misfortune, as the fate of those whose feet are slipping. The tents of marauders undisturbed, and those who provoke God are secure, those who carry their God in their hand. So talking about sinners get away with things. And he says, but ask the animals, they'll teach you. And I'm not going to go on to that part, but he's saying they know, the animals of the air. So what's actually going on here is the friend's assertion of Job's guilt is driving Job to defend himself all that more. He feels like he's got to. I can't read it. My eyes aren't good enough. Oh, okay. This one I'm trying to. There now. Okay, thank you. I forget to do that. I get started talking. She wanted me to let you see that. But so anyway, so Job is having to defend himself against theirs. They're being focused on the law, God being the law. That's what their total intent is looking at, is that God is. And again, they're not wrong. God established the law. God is the law. But that's not the only side of God. That's the trouble. God has a merciful side. He has a gracious side. And who he shows that to are the ones who come to him humble in heart. Read all through the New Testament with Jesus. Look at who he gets in the face of and is sharp with, and who he's gentle to. He's gentle with the sinner. He says, don't do that anymore. He doesn't condone it, but he doesn't condemn them. The woman in adultery is a great case. There's no question about that. And there's no question that adultery is against the Ten Commandments, against God's will. But she is being, the unfair situation is they didn't bring the man in. It takes two to tango, right? They didn't bring him in. They brought her in. And they're throwing her, and they want Jesus to stone her. And if they're going to do it, both of them should have been. But Jesus doesn't take up their argument. Now, they're not wrong. She committed adultery, and the law says that. So what does Jesus do? He sits there and draws in the sand. A lot of people want to spend time figuring out what he drew. It doesn't matter. They disappear. It's just a woman there in front of them. And to me, that's one of the best verses in the Bible. It says, women, where are your detractors? They've left, Lord. Where are those who condemn you? They've left. Then he says that sweet words, neither do I condemn you. That means her soul to hell. But go and sin no more. And she turned her life around. She was one of the ladies, one of the Marys at the cross. That God, His grace there turned around. If He had exacted His judgment and law, condemned her to death, she'd have spent her eternity in hell. But because He was gracious and merciful, didn't condone her sin, but didn't condemn her then, she had a chance to turn her life around and to follow Him. And that's what's is going on here. Job is having to defend himself because they're coming so hard against him. And so this makes it sound, as you read here, if you read this and if you've been reading what Job says, it kind of makes it sound like Job's changing his tune a little bit and accusing God. But that's not his heart. They're just driving him to this place of defending himself to where he maybe speaks in a way what we call a little out of turn, not really where his heart is, but he's defending himself against them. But remember what we read, Job originally said in that first chapter when he lost, not before the boils, but he lost his family. What did he say? The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord. That's his heart. And here he's being driven to defend himself against these false accusations. And all of us, when we face that, when somebody accuses us falsely and we try to defend ourselves, we don't do it perfectly. We speak up, and it distorts what we're saying, trying to defend vigorously, and it can corrupt our thoughts, and then that gets turned around back on us. And so that's sometimes a good lesson for us to learn, is when we're being accused, when people are talking about us, the best response is silence. Because if we speak, we generally just dig a deeper trap for ourselves. And if we can just be silent, walk away, there's an old phrase I remember reading a long time ago that said, don't apologize. I don't agree with that completely, but here's the point. It says, your friends don't need it. Your enemies won't believe it. Okay? If they're truly your friends, you don't need to defend yourself. They know who you are. And those that are against you, they don't believe it anyway. So that's what they're saying. Don't lower yourself to apologize. We do need to apologize from time to time, but that's the point here. So then we get down to Job 4 and 5. Job, in his grief-stricken state and his bodily torment, is having to spend what little energy he has countering his friends' accusations. Job becomes bitter and sarcastic towards his friends because they're not helping, but they're hurting their friend. They're not seeing the real situation. They've come, and they're more concerned with defending God, pointing out Job's wrong, than they are caring about their friend. And as I read this, it brought up to me just a really important lesson for us to learn in life. This introduces a great learning point. In this case, Job was truly innocent of his friend's accusations of what was happening. But in life, there are friends that sometimes get in trouble because they do things wrong. Children, we've had it all. We know those friends. They have messed up, and they're suffering for that. And it is because of their error in some way. But at that moment of suffering, what they don't need is being accused of wrong and being told they got to straighten out. At that point, they need comfort, not correction. And we need to be sensitive to that. And it can be hard because we see somebody that's having a struggle because they're drinking too much, because they're gambling too much, or they're just other ways they're wasting. And we know they need to change that, but now they're hurting and they need a friend to support them. And it takes a tremendous balance to be there for them, but not say things that make it sound like you agree with what they're doing. It takes some wisdom to learn how to do that, to be there. And sometimes, again, these friends were good friends while they sat around silent around the fire, okay, commiserating with them. when they opened their mouth, that's when it got bad. So we can take that to point that we need to help the person through the hurt, help the person through the problem, support them, while not wrongly saying or implying they haven't done wrong. Then later, when the heat is off, we need to say something. We need to address why the suffering occurred, teach them why they are doing wrong. Say something to them. We don't need to let it go. They'll just be back. They do need a friend that points things out, but we need to be cognizant of the timing of that, of the right time to say things, and when they'll listen. And one of the ways we can get people to listen to us is if we are beside them and support them through the painful times. Then once they come out, we've kind of earned a respect. We've earned a right to say that now, to turn around and say, now, Wes, think about what you've been doing. How did you get in this problem? Well, I was drinking too much. I spent too much time. That made me mean. I beat my wife. That's where it started. That's right. What can we do to get you over this drinking problem or drug problem or gambling, whatever? So I really believe in that a lot. And, one of the things I did with my kids, we disciplined them. We taught them right and wrong. But we were careful about that because everybody out there in the world will point out your failures. You don't have any trouble finding people that'll tell you what you're not doing right. And where do they need support? They need support at home. And so you do that, and you learn how to do that, but instruct them. And there are many times I told my kids, you're not stupid, but you just did something stupid. There's a difference. You can make people think they're stupid. You can run them down. You can so verbally address them that they lose all esteem. But typically, they're not stupid. They just did something stupid. And so we want to help them out of that, but we want to support, and it really does take a tremendous amount of wisdom, patience, and thinking before you speak. So that's one thing I got from this. And the rest of the chapter, the rest of the next few chapters, through chapter 14, Job is recounting again himself, recounting the things of God, pleading to God. 13:20 says, only grant me these two things, God, and then I won't hide from you. Withdraw your hand from me and start frightening me with your terrors. Have mercy on me. That's what that boils down to. One of the great verses in the book of Job, and if you're looking chapter 13, verse 15, this is Job's heart. Though he may slay me, yet I will hope in him. I will surely defend my ways to his face. But though he may slay me, yet my hope is in him. Though whatever comes to me, my hope is in God. I'm not going to abandon that. That is a tremendous position of faith, and he said that in the midst of this problem. That's a good one for us, that first part, to write down on a card, put up in our home to remind us of that over and over again. Most of us know the adage, you attract more flies with honey than vinegar. We shouldn't be false people. We don't want to patronize people. We don't want to, again, act like, you're doing everything right. We have that too. There are some people are two-faced like that. We'll talk to them about a problem, and we'll go to them about somebody treating us wrong, the boss treating us wrong. Oh, you're right, you're right, you're right. They'll say to our face. And then when we're not there, they're telling their friends how stupid we are. Or they're, not backing us up. They're two-faced. We have to be honest. We don't want to patronize them or say they're doing right, but we don't have to jump down their throat. We're going to do better to have that relationship and earn that right to speak to them. And so we shouldn't be false people, but act appropriately for the moment. When a person is in pain, they need comfort, not correction. after they are comforted. Is that what I wrote? Yeah. And better then is the time to approach their error and recommend correction when things are settled down. Just like Job said here, look, man, I got all this going on, and now I've got 3 friends just coming against me with sledgehammers, accusing me, and I'm hurting. I mean, he was physically hurting. His heart was hurting, and now he's got to defend himself to people supposed to be his friends. And he can't be blamed for maybe saying something out of turn. That's the way it is. When we're in the midst of a problem, we can't think clearly. Help us through the problem, then help us through the real solution. Additionally, when we console in the darkness, we are in the respect to correct in the daylight. And I wrote a question, isn't that what Jesus did? I mentioned the woman caught in adultery as one of them. Another one is Matthew 9:13. Jesus is speaking, and he's quoting Hosea 6:6. Matthew 9:13. It'll be a familiar passage to you, but I want to start at verse 9, the calling of Matthew. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. One of the worst choices to the people, according to them, for God to do that. Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. What did the leaders of the Jews say? Did they come and praise Jesus for witnessing, for helping them? No. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked the disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? So they jumped on him about that. On hearing this, Jesus said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. See, they were big on sacrifice, and they would tout themselves about all the sacrifices. Another place, Jesus is talking to them, and he says, you know, you're so legalistic about the law that you tie down to the cumin and all the spices. He said, but you do neglect having mercy towards others. It's better that you do both. They weren't to forsake the law and the tithing in this case, but they were supposed to have mercy, and they had lost the mercy. So that's what Jesus is saying here. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I have come to call the righteous, I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. Jesus came to those who didn't know. There were those who thought they knew who rejected him. They should have been the most ready to receive Jesus Christ, but they didn't. But those sinners would sit and listen to Jesus. Those sinners followed him around. Those sinners were the oppressed ones that were being put down, and they responded to Jesus' love. And Jesus was able to speak to them, help them, teach them. He was merciful. He didn't condone their sin. He told them, don't do that anymore. But he gave them that mercy, that love, and that's a tremendous lesson for us, is to be sure we are loving and accepting, not the people. It's not our position to condemn. That's shared this in sermons before. That's the mistake we made with attitude about not to judge others. You hear that? So, don't you judge me. Well, we are to judge right and wrong. And it says that all through the Bible. People want to ignore that part. But there are levels to judging. And where Jesus is talking about, judge not lest you be judged, is that attitude of condemning them as worthless and deserving only of hell. That's not our position. That's God's position. We are not to judge people in that way. We are to discern right and wrong. We are to preach against it. We are to try to correct it. But again, if we come hard against somebody like Zophar came against Job in your town, you know things going on here. You know people that are on drugs, been on drugs. If you come and just keep hitting them in the face, are they going to listen to you? They're going to do all they can to avoid you. There's a way to be there and hold them when they're throwing up, when they're sick, to see them through the night, and then to gain that opportunity, that respect, to say, there's a better way you could do on this, isn't it? Why are you doing those drugs? They're taking all your money, they're taking your life, they're taking your family, and helping them to do that. And that, of course, that's part of Alcoholics Anonymous and others, where they get a mentor that when they start slipping, they're able to call that moment, and they commit themselves to go and help. If they're in a bar and they're struggling because work went bad, they go and they help get them out of there to where they don't fall back into it. Because we're all prone to that. We all have those weaknesses. Things go wrong. We fall back into old paths. We need a friend to come alongside to say, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go get something to eat. Let's go get you some coffee. And then just listen to them without judgment. Without judgment expressed to them. We're going to judge that we know they did wrong. We know they need help. And at the right time, the one thing, they're not going to hear you if they're drunk or in a skunk. They're not going to remember what you say. You got to get them sober if it's a drinking problem. You got to get that right time. And that's one thing I saw here with Job, is and that he complained about. His friends came. All they did was pile on, and they used truth to do it. God is awesome. God is holy. God is above all. But they only showed one side of God. There's the other side of God that is merciful and gracious. And all of us have experienced that. Thank God, no pun intended. If we did not have His mercy and grace, none of us could survive the day. And we need to show that to others. So that just really spoke to me as I went through that and reading that.